Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kay. Today I'm doing my second part of the Best Fantasy series, and I'm going to start with the one that is at the top as far as the order of the list and work my way down. So first up is The Game of Thrones, which is the first book in the Song of Ice and Fire series by George R. R. Martin. This series is number one on the list. I feel like pretty much everyone has probably heard of it thanks to the TV show. I will say that the books are better, obviously. So this is a reread for me. I read the 5 books that are out back in like 2012, 2013. I watched the first season and really liked the show and wanted to check out the books, and then decided to read all the books before I continued on with the show. So this was a reread. I already knew that I really loved it, but I will say that I had forgotten how much I liked it. I'm not sure if it's because, one, it was just so long ago that I read the books, but then I've continued to watch the show, and so the show kind of replaced things, I guess, in my memory. So I've really enjoyed rereading it. I'm up to, I just finished Storm of Swords, so I have 2 books left for my reread, and it's actually, yeah, a really good time. I mostly am here for kind of the political strategizing and the backstabbing. I really actually do enjoy the characters. A lot of people have a problem with the way women are treated in this world, but taking into account that George R. R. Martin largely based a lot of this stuff off of actual historical times, and has, because of that, kind of actually kept the more magical things subtle. It's not so over-the-top fantasy. I'm not super put off by it. He does have some really strong female characters, so it's not like the women take a back seat as far as the story goes, or, you know, are just left to be damsels in distress or to always be victims. You do have a lot of strong characters. You have Brienne of Tarth and Dany and Cersei. Catelyn is a really strong mother type of figure. You even have Arya and Sansa, who are their children in the books. They're a lot younger than in the show. So I think like Arya's 8 or 9 and Sansa's like 12. So you even have female children characters that are very different from each other. And so on the topic of, you know, how women are treated in the book, yes, the sexism in the society as a whole is there. Yes, that is tiring to read about when you go from book to book and you have all these different books by all these different authors and you just always see that. But in this case, I still think that you get strong female characters. You have female characters pushing back on societal expectations. You have ones that go along with what, you know, society would expect, especially in Catelyn, as far as being a highborn lady and being a mother and that kind of thing. So you have kind of a spectrum of characters, and I would almost say that the female characters, to me, are more interesting most of the time than the male characters. So that's just my hot take on how women are treated in Westeros. Anyway, yeah, so the political stuff I think is kind of the top of the list of why I enjoy this series. Things are revealed kind of as you go along, and so it reshapes how you see past events from past books, which is always really fun. You kind of kept on your off foot. You don't always know what's going to be coming. There's the obvious, anyone can die at any time, which is huge for me. I love it because you don't have that, oh well, don't know how the character's going to make it through all this, but he will, and it'll be fine. And no, you don't know, because yes, characters die. Seemingly important characters die. Main, primary viewpoint characters die, and it's usually pretty realistic. I mean, if they're in a situation where in real life you wouldn't really make it through that, they don't. And I really like that. So I think that Song of Ice and Fire, as far as what's out so far, I haven't reread the last 2 books, which a lot of people say are the weakest too, and I don't really remember how I felt about them originally, so we'll see. But as far as the first 3 books go, very strong, very enjoyable. I gave them 5 stars. I really, really do love them. So, next up, Chronicles of Narnia, C.S. Lewis, number 11 on the list. I read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. This was also a reread back when I was in 2nd grade, so when I was a little tot. We did like a whole thing in our class. We read the book, we watched the miniseries, and then a high school in one of the nearby towns was actually doing their theater production of Lion, the Witch, and Wardrobe. So then we actually took like a little field trip as a class and went over and watched it as well. So we really like were immersed in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And I remember at the time, like, it was great, but part of that was I was like, what, 7 or 8 years old. I was experiencing it with a group, which I think does make a difference. And I hadn't really read much of anything at that time. I read a lot, but it was just, I would pick up anything and just read it just to read. It wasn't really, I hadn't figured out how to pick things up for enjoyment purposes and like, oh, I like these kinds of books and I don't really care for that kind of book. So I was still really like unformed as a reader, and I was very young. Rereading it now, I did not like it. If it hadn't been for video purposes, I would not have finished it. It is a short book, and I think it suffers from the same kind of things as the Princess and Amber series, where it's so short, it doesn't really develop anything, so you don't see the conflicts really developed, you don't see characters developed, you don't have a clear sense of purpose for the villain. She seems to just be evil because she's evil and doesn't really have like a driving force behind it, which is not something that I find, compelling. I want my characters to have reasons for what they're doing, reasons for being whatever way that they are, and when they don't, it really brings it down. And yeah, so this was not a book for me. The allegory also was not something I'm really into. So overall, I just didn't really care for it. Yeah. Next up is his Dark Materials by Philip Pullman. I read The Golden Compass. Actually, I read all 3 of the books. I just went ahead and did, again, another reread. This is number 12 on the list, so it's right under Chronicles of Narnia. Like I said, I read it previously, and didn't really remember anything really from books 2 and 3. Book 1, I remembered like certain plot points and certain little elements, but largely I'd forgotten. So it was almost like reading it all over again for the first time. And so I read The Golden Compass first, obviously, and actually was surprised by how much I enjoyed it. I did not find Lyra annoying or difficult to read. A lot of the times I have a hard time reading young characters. Everything is simplified, and so it's like, okay, I know where this is going, and that was a really kind of dumb mistake. I mean, yes, it's a child, but it's like, I don't enjoy reading that kind of stuff. So I was surprised by how readable this book was. I think the demon thing, where it's like your soul, it's a physical manifestation of your soul, I think that's very interesting. And it's kind of like with the Patronuses, like, what would mine be? I wonder. I don't know. It's kind of like along those lines. And yeah, so I was actually very surprised by how much I did enjoy The Golden Compass. I felt like Mrs. Coulter as a villain was very good. You have like the church as the faceless corporation type of thing, where that, this faceless villain that is out doing bad stuff. But then they have Mrs. Coulter as the, individual embodiment of that villainy, and that worked for me. I think if you're going to have some big bad where it's off page, it's far away, you need something there that's immediate that your characters can act against, and I think Mrs. Coulter was really, really good for that, because she is seemingly, good. She's beautiful, she's apparently kind and polite, and she, has a lot of friends and moves around in society, and then underneath that, though, she's really kind of rotten and selfish, and she's a zealot, and she's just not a good person. she's hurting children and doesn't care. So as a villain, I feel like she was very well done in this first book. Going forward into the second and third, the second one I liked much less. You see Lyra kind of become more of a side character. She loses a lot of her agency. It's all about Will now and what he wants to do. And she kind of just is there to help him. And it even is so far as like, she's not going to use the alethiometer unless he tells her to, and he tells her what to ask. Like, whereas in the first book, she was taking charge, she was pushing the story forward, she had a goal and she was going to accomplish it. Second book, she's just following Will around. And it's like, what do you need me to do next? What should I do? Oh, I've got to help you. Never mind that I had my own goals here. Got to do what Will wants to do and help him out. And then the third book just really plummeted for me, and I hated it. To be honest, it was just, by the end, I'm like, really? So many of the things that I enjoyed in the first book were just kind of undone or whatever, and I did not like how it was handled. So Golden Compass was good. A solid 4-star enjoyable book. And then after that, the second two just downhill. Last up, Discworld by Terry Pratchett. This is number 13 on the list. I read The Color of Magic and hated it. I take notes, or I try to remember to take notes, I guess, when I read. And the only thing I wrote about this was I hate absurd fiction. So this is, you know, comedy, satire, a lot of off-the-wall stuff that, you know, you expect things to work one way and everything in the book is kind of the opposite, just for the sake of being different, being the opposite. And I didn't find it funny. I didn't like it. Again, this is another one I would have quit reading if it wasn't for video purposes, because I just could not. It took a long time to read. It's not very long. It's 200 pages or less. And, oh, it took weeks, I think, to get through it. So, yeah, I can't say that I enjoyed this. I can see where other people would. My mom likes these type of books, and I know a lot of people do. Obviously, Discworld made this list, so a lot of people like it. But it's just not for me at all. So I cannot say that I had a good time reading it. So that wraps it up for this segment of Best Fantasy. Thanks for sticking around, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!